Mediation between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West ends, and we're going to trial.
Conference realignment and lawsuits are always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain.
Hey, welcome back to the Big Mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. Steve, something that we talk about far too often here on the Big Mountain, that being lawsuits in college athletics. Well, 2 weeks ago and 1 day prior to the Mountain West Media Days, we learned that the mediation between the Pac-12, Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, and the Mountain West, this global resolution, as Commissioner Navarez was looking for, concluded but failed to produce a settlement. This was after 2 months worth of mediation, which started on May 19th. In a court filing here on July 15th, the two conferences stated that, quote, the parties participated in mediation on May 19th, 2025, and were unable to resolve the case. It then goes on to say that, quote, the parties have met and conferred and respectfully request that the court hold a hearing on the pending motion to dismiss on September 9th, 2025. Of course, both parties here, both conferences issue statements after this. The Mountain West Conference states that they, quote, provided the Pac-12 institutions with a lifeline offering a full football schedule for the 2024 season. The Pac-12 willingly signed the scheduling agreement with full knowledge of the contractual provisions and is now attempting to avoid its legal obligation. The Mountain West will aggressively protect the interests of our member institutions and is fully prepared to hold the Pac-12 accountable. In the Pac-12 statement, they say that they engaged in the mediation process in good faith. They went on to then say that, quote, the Pac-12 remains committed to moving forward with this legal action in response to the Mountain West's attempt to impose so-called poaching penalty provisions that they believe are unlawful and intended to obstruct the ability to act in the best interests of the student athletes and member institutions. They also say they are confident in the strength of their position. So what we know right now is that the federal case here in California, that is the case between the two conferences, is going to be having this hearing on the motion to dismiss on September 9th. As of today, we do not have any further information on the case in Colorado. That's a state case. That is the one where the three schools, Boise State, Colorado State, and Utah State, are looking to lower, I guess, their exit fees with the Mountain West. And I want to be clear, I think that one, the three schools versus the Mountain West, is all about negotiating a lower figure for the settlement fees. We've thrown out 15 to 17 million. I see some people saying 17 to 18 million. All in, we're talking about $85-ish million when it all comes said and done for those exit fees, Steve. So I want to hear from you. What was your take when this news dropped, and where do you think maybe we're headed?
Well, as we were, getting ready to head out to the sports and entertainment capital of the world for Mountain West Media Days, we were kind of excited, hoping maybe we hear an announcement, settlement moving forward, and all that. And I would say this is just another disappointment for me in a long line of disappointments. Last year, you and I were quite clear, I think, in what we would have liked to have seen, which would have been a merger to create kind of a premier college athletic conference, west of the Mississippi. And that didn't happen. Both sides are now kind of in this protracted battle to figure out who's going to pay how much to who. But the only people that are going to win in this, as are the lawyers, the billable hours, all of that. And now, there's going to be money paid out, and they're just fighting about how much it's going to be at this point. So just disappointed. I was really hoping we would get some kind of settlement. I think it would have been good for everybody just to move forward. But they couldn't come to an agreement, and now both sides have kind of retreated to their positions, making their statements, those boilerplate statements that they have to make, and fighting forward, and maybe we'll see this go to court. I still, I always hesitate to think any of these are actually going to go to court, go through discovery and all that kind of stuff. So But this one, it just seems like they're in an impasse that they can't agree on.
Well, and we were clear that we thought a merger was the best case scenario globally. I understand individually why some schools and institutions may not feel that's the case, but globally we believe, and I still believe that's the case. And it's because here we sit today with the Western and Mountain schools fighting amongst themselves when they should be utilizing all of this money and time and effort in, I'm going to say it, fighting the East, because the East is the formidable foe. There is a massive Eastern bias. We see it. We've talked about it before, and we're pissing and moaning over each other on the West when we should be worried about what the heck is going on in the East, because the bias is real, and that's what they should be fighting. So I have a couple questions, I think, for you, Steve, that I'd like to hear from you. And maybe you can tell me, like, yeah, you're reading too much into this, JY, or, oh, that is an interesting tidbit. So the first one has to do with what was in the court filing. And I found it interesting. The court filing says that, let me get it up here. I thought I had it. I apologize. Oh, where is it, Steve? There it is. It says the parties participated in mediation on May 19th, 2025.
Yes.
When I read that, I went,
note of that as well.
It says on, which to me means it happened one time.
Right.
Am I reading too much into that? No. I mean, that's verbatim from the filing.
No, I don't think you are. And we thought because the mediation process was going on so long, that was a good sign. But now maybe it's the case that they met one time and maybe they were just negotiating on when to meet again or if they wanted to meet again.
Sure.
So maybe there wasn't as much going on as we thought. And the process is confidential.
Right.
You know, people asked Commissioner Navarez at the Mountain West Media Days about it, and she said, "Look, I can't talk about it. It's ongoing litigation. The mediation is confidential." So we really don't know. But we assumed that the timeline that was a good thing. But now it's a great thing to point that out. It said they engaged on that date. So maybe nothing else has happened since then. And if that's the case, then boy, they are really in their corners and nothing good is going on.
Which makes me, and we said, so that, when I read that, the word on was very interesting to me.
Agreed.
Because we have been saying, well, it's ongoing. They went for the extension. This is a good thing. They're working together. They're getting closer. But if the facts are that they met one time and for whatever reason they didn't meet again, oh, that's rough.
Yes.
That's a whole different can of worms, a whole different story maybe than what we thought. And again, I don't want to maybe put too much weight on that, but you saw it. I saw it right away.
Yes.
And that's interesting. The other thing I think is interesting is that the PAC says in their statement, we went through this process, and what they were talking about was the mediation process. We went through the mediation process in good faith. To me, that's a little odd. That why would you say that? Of course you're going through a mediation process in good faith, because the counter to that would be not in good faith. So why would they say that?
I think it's standard boilerplate language. Like the Mountain West, basically, their statement was, "Hey, we gave this. You know, we gave them a lifeline, saying and this is boilerplate statement saying, well, we participated in this. They have to say it. It's like it basically they're saying like we wanted to come to some kind of agreement, but it didn't happen because if they didn't say that, then you know they can't make that claim, you know, when they come to a hearing and all that. So honestly, I think that one is just standard verbiage. Probably that the whatever, you know, legal office they're using, it's probably in a template on someone's computer that they say we
always say good faith.
Good faith, yes.
Okay. So let's get into a little bit of speculation. Like those were the two pieces that I wanted to have you say, yeah, maybe something there, And I'm not. The on was something I wanted to hear from you because when I read it, I'm like, wow, that's telling.
100%.
The good faith, I kind of hear you. It's boilerplate, but at the same time, I'm like, why? Okay. All right, let's go. Let's speculate a little bit, right?
Okay.
And we got to separate these because now we're moving forward with two separate cases. We tried to mediate them together. Now they're separate. To me, let's go with the easy one first.
Yeah.
That being the exit fees, right? Like this is all about negotiations, and maybe since the mediation was a global where they brought all parties in, maybe the Mountain West and the exiting parties can come to an agreement much quicker than the PAC. But remember, the they're both kind of pointing at each other saying, you're double dipping.
Yes.
So, it's going to be interesting to see how that actually plays out, because the exit fees, part of their argument are that, hey, they're also getting these fees from the poaching penalties.
Yes.
They can't double dip.
Right.
And part of the PAC settlement is, hey, they're getting the exit fees over there. You can't double dip. Now, the bigger thing with the poaching penalties is antitrust. We're going to get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So let's talk to the exit fees. Like, do you think this opens the door up to maybe at least getting one of these settled much more quicker than the other? Or are you like, yeah, they're probably all just dug in. We're going to have to wait and see.
I think personally that the exit fee case in Colorado much more likely to come to a settlement earlier. With that, they're just arguing over the dollar amount.
Yes, right.
Where are we going to fall on the scale? With the federal case, they're really arguing about, is this even allowed? Is this a thing? Is this legal? Does this violate antitrust, which could blow everything up, kind of thing? And so the stakes are higher in that. And so I think both sides will go to the mat, go farther until they're at a point where they're just threatened too much by a potential outcome. Whereas the other one, we're arguing over nuts and bolts here. The exit fees, they're going to pay some money. It's just how much.
Yeah. Well, and remember, I'm going to hearken this back to, we followed very closely the PAC lawsuits of 2 years ago.
Yep.
Here we sit 2 years later in the same damn situation.
Yep.
Now, we're arguing different things, but we're talking about the PAC-12 in a lawsuit, in litigation, over something with their conference, for crying out loud.
Yes.
And you're right. I think the exit fees, I think the only thing that holds the exit fees up are if they want to tie them to, and they're really trying to allow the poaching penalties to kind of set the tone on the exit fees. Yeah. I don't know. It's not the PAC there. It's the three members. Yeah. So hopefully that can get worked out, like you said, a little faster, or a lot faster, quite frankly. Whereas the PAC-12 and Mountain West, it's kind of, I can see where they're both just like, hey, we're going to go balls to the wall and go all in here because it's all or nothing. And the Mountain West wants it all, and the Pac-12 wants nothing. And there's no real past precedence for this. It's somewhat novel. And especially now that we have this motion to dismiss, and to tie this back to where I started, what we saw in the original or 2 year ago Pac-12 case, when you started actually having hearings and lawyers started to speak to a judge, and then rulings were had. Yes. And for example here, let's just assume it's not going to be dismissed because that bar is very high. Although I've heard attorneys say they could see this being dismissed. I'm not going to go that far. But does that push them closer? If it isn't dismissed, obviously if it is, it's a done deal. But if it isn't dismissed, does that push the Mountain West closer to the PAC to try and, okay, now let's kind of settle? Although I feel like the Mountain West is maybe a little bit more interested in settling than the PAC is. And that's not a knock on the PAC. Yeah. I'm not trying to crap on the PAC with that. What are your thoughts there with that? Like, as you see it moving forward in the courts, things can start to happen.
I think that's the thing. And we talked about this a lot with the PAC, original suits of the PAC. And we talked about this with the Florida State, Clemson, ACC issue as well. When one side racks up a couple victories in a row, it puts pressure on the other side. And you can kind of see where this is headed from procedural rulings. Not even arguing the facts of the case, but if I remember correctly, the PAC, they won their original case and they won like an appeal to the Supreme Court.
Correct. Yes.
And so that really showed the other side, like, hey, this is not going well for you.
Right.
Let's not continue this. Let's come to a settlement. So I think, and winning one ruling is probably not enough to do that. It's like you have to get that second or third one. And again, we saw that. Florida State, ACC, once the Florida State University started winning a couple motions in the state of Florida, the ACC could see like this wasn't going good for us, and that gave them some motivation, whatever. So I think you have to have that again. Now, one thing that I think is very significant, we started to get into this. Again, the state case, I think, is the one in Colorado, very kind of cut and dry.
Sure.
The exit fees, we've had exit fees in conferences for a long time. They've been paid out, and almost every time they're negotiated down. The school almost never pays the original amount. But this poaching thing is really a new novel concept. Yep. And so they're arguing, and it's in federal court. if you remember, I kept saying, for the Florida State thing, does this ever go to federal court? Because when you go to federal court and you get into the area of antitrust or antitrust cases, anti-competitive practices, it's riskier. Like,
Yes.
you could have the whole thing blown up where they say, this agreement was never legal, and where that sets a precedent to other conferences then. And other conferences start to feel the pain of, okay, this was a ruling in federal court. Now we know we can't do this. And how does that affect other conferences, which, let's look at the Big Four, they have all the money, all the power. Do they really want to see the Mountain West and PAC fight over something that could affect them?
Right.
So they might start to exert some pressure, like, hey guys, you need to freaking settle this, because this is getting ready to upset the entire apple cart of college athletics.
And it's interesting. I mean, we'll see what happens moving forward. September 9th, not that far away. As I said, unlikely to be dismissed. But we'll see where things go. Of course, if there's news coming out of the Colorado case, we will bring that to you as well. Steve, as soon as we get done with one just creeps back up. Yep. We went from PAC to ACC, back to PAC again. And so since the mediation's over, we're moving forward with trial. So as things turn up, we'll bring them to you. With that, we thank you guys for watching The Big Mountain. We'll have another live show here on Wednesday, and we're getting ready for college football season 2025. We're going to start putting out some of our early line picks, and we're going to pick every Mountain West and Big Ten game this year. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check us out on our Wednesday evening live episodes. With that, make sure you give this one a like, subscribe if you like our content, and we'll see you next time on The Big Mountain.